Welcome to O-Talkin' with Dave. Put your hands together for the pastor of positivity whose glass is always at least half full. Here's Dave.
Hey, how we doing out there? I hope you're doing well. I am top shelf, ready to go. Ready to go. I was watching some movies lately. Spent some time at my dad's, and we watch a lot of Westerns. We do. We grew up watching those. And it cracks me up, the lack of dialogue in some of these Westerns. You know, spaghetti Westerns, the Clint Eastwood stuff, or even some of the series back then. You know, the Gunsmoke, Wagon Train, Bonanza. There are whole sections where no one says anything. You know, they're showing the landscape, or they're watching horses run, or even the interaction between people. There's a lot less dialogue. You think about it, well, it's easier to learn your lines, but you gotta do whatever is necessary to be entertaining. But I got to thinking about that. Some of the most powerful people and times and in business and personal life has been when people use silence correctly or powerfully or strategically. And sometimes I don't think it's strategic at all. I think it's just who they are. I think about some of the people, influential people that I knew growing up. Of course, Papo, my granddad. Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody waited to hear what he had to say about something. We would sit on the front porch, and my goodness, we would go a long time without talking, but he would point or whatever. And when he did say something, it was powerful. Of course, hero worship on my part. I mean, anything he said would have been great. He could have fussed at me. I'm thinking, oh, this is fantastic. But also think about, we had a friend, my mom and dad had a good friend, Willadine and Willard Tucker. But Willard was big guy. I think he was a mechanical engineer. I'm not sure. He built his house. That's the couple that used to take me camping. They were like another set of grandparents to me. But he was very quiet. Very quiet. He would tell a joke every now and then, but he would laugh. He let other people be funny, and he would laugh. But he loved to fish. He loved to camp. He loved to build things. But he wasn't a big talker. No, he wasn't. And then I think of one of my, I didn't know him that long, but he impressed me. He was a sales guy. He was the guy that he didn't do well with new ways of going about it. Or we would go to a sales training class, and he would always sit by me, and they would teach us new techniques and all this stuff way back in my goodness, this was late 90s, I guess. And he would say, David, all I know is I never got in trouble for selling too much. And that's the way. And we eventually just said, John, just go sell. Just do it your way. But he was a man of few words. And I could go on and on, but it's so powerful. You think about, they say just about everything can be solved with better communication. Definitely. And, husband and wife, or, friends or kids or work. It's a communication problem. It is incredible to me when you look at how sometimes the best communication is silence. Silence has a tremendous influence on a situation. It creates space. It creates control. It can create deeper understanding of things. And it has never underestimate the strategic impact of silence. And, a few reasons why. Silence commands attention. Think about it. When you stop talking or when you pause, people lean in to listen. Some people will lower their voice to where you really have to listen. I was at a session last week, and the guy had a microphone, and so it was loud and you could hear him very well and everything. He took the microphone off to where he had to talk a little bit louder, but people had to lean in and listen more. Silence does that. It brings it in. Sometimes that pause, it creates suspense. It makes what you say more important. I know some people, and I've been accused of this, they feel like they get paid by the word, you know, but a leader pausing before a major announcement, going up, you get introduced to where they go up and they wait a second before they start talking, or maybe they adjust the microphone, or they scan the crowd first. It really creates anticipation, but that silence, it commands attention. I love it. And another thing it does, it forces other people to speak. Some people can't stand silence, and I'm probably in that category sometimes. An awkward silence, I'm probably going to crack a joke or something. But silence strategically, it really forces somebody else to speak, to fill in that gap. And a lot of times, if they're a little loose-lipped, they'll reveal something that otherwise wouldn't have been done. I like to, in the interview process, I usually like to talk to people and get them very comfortable and then be quiet and let them talk. Because the more comfortable they are, the more they're going to reveal. And sometimes I find out extra positive things, or occasionally extra negative things I wouldn't have found out if I'd have been filling the void with words. So silence forces other people to speak. In negotiations, it's fantastic. You can, they have tails, or they want to back up a little bit, or soften their stance if you're silent. Very good. And then it also, I tell you, the person who can tolerate silence, that's a confident person. They usually command a little more control, because you talk too much or too quickly, it makes you feel, or seem either nervous or unsure of yourself. But silence and that calm demeanor, it makes you more powerful and in more control. A lot of, CEOs and leaders in business, they'll listen before they speak. And that, I've talked over and over about the person who last one to speak in a conversation. They have gained all the information, and now they can speak almost in summary or based on what everybody said, rather than putting your stance out there up front. Now there are cases for that as well, but it's great because it makes you appear, or reveals that you're more confident. And then too, it helps you. Being silent helps your listening skills. To take it in, what people are saying. Don't. My granddad used to tell me, or other people, he was like, you don't have to say everything. He lived by that. You keep certain things to yourself. You keep things close to the vest, but it helps you listen when you're silent. And a salesperson who listens more than they talk, they can tailor their pitch or their approach or their words a lot better. And then silence so many times is just more powerful than words. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence can portray approval, seriousness, or even a depth of thought so much better than words. What do they say? It's better you be quiet and have half the people think you're an idiot than open your mouth and confirm it to everybody. Yeah. A disappointed parent, or coach. Oh, that silence hurts worse than a lecture, or them yelling at you. Oh, come on, give me something. And in relationships, I remember when the silent treatment used to work. My wife, we're on a good one lately, just laughing about it. But please, can you give me the silent treatment, just for an hour? But by mastering silence, you gain influence. You can gain authority, definitely control over conversations, and you let people know you're more serious. People are gonna wonder what you're thinking. And sometimes they'll make a move preemptively because they're not sure. They may be afraid of what you're thinking, or they may want to make sure you're on their side. So silence is so powerful there. And it's in negotiation and influence, some of the strategic things that you can do and ways to use silence. And, it's good to work on these is that dramatic pause. Not like Joey and the smell the fart face, in Friends, but that dramatic pause. And it can be, it's not necessarily just before. I mean, you can make a strong statement and then pause. Let it breathe a little bit. Let it resonate. It's almost, I've seen a lot of comedians who they'll tell a joke or a bit, and while people are laughing, they'll start another one. Oh, you got to pause. And sometimes you have to pause. The masters of comedy, they will tell maybe it's a complex joke or has some layers to it. And that pause allows the crowd to get it. And you'll hear them slowly, and then the laughter comes in waves because you can see them get it. That pause is so important. Remain silent. You'll see a lot of speakers or comedians, they'll have water or something to drink, and that is a timing thing to slow them down, to make them pause. I know some who used to smoke, and they would take a draw, that would make them pause. It's great. It's powerful. It's powerful. It forces the other person or other people a lot of times to respond. Comedians, it responds with laughter. Responding to this with silence. Someone says something that's thought-provoking and they pause. I can be silent and also be thinking about that. I can be thinking about my response. I can be thinking about what was just said. But pausing and allowing silence to happen is fantastic for everybody. But it's still, whenever you pause before you say something, it gives what you're about to say weight and anticipation. Then when you pause afterwards, it does the same thing. It allows that to get, in negotiations, it's so important. If you state your offer, remain silent. And, in sales so many times when you have stated something and it's time for a response, a yes, a no, a question about what you've said, the rule is the first one to speak loses. I've heard that my whole career. It was true last week in a negotiation. And first one to speak loses. But that's because of the power of silence. So the pause is important. Also, the silent response to pressure. When someone's pressuring you for an answer or a reaction, they're putting you on the spot, staying silent and composed is a very powerful tool because it keeps you in control and it unsettles the other person because they put you on the spot. They actually, a lot of times I've seen this, if someone puts you on the spot and you're quiet and you're calm, they've stepped out on that ledge to play their cards and you didn't respond the way they wanted to, many, many, many times they'll back down, especially if they've been overly aggressive. We've always said if someone says something, you pause, then ask them to restate it. And then ask them their intention. And then no matter what they say, you be silent. It's fantastic. But that response to a pressure-filled situation, silence is best. If somebody's criticizing you, you be quiet and make them make another move. Usually they'll adjust their stance. Yeah, I love it. Then the strategic withdrawal is another way to use silence. Instead of arguing or reacting emotionally, just remove yourself from the conversation. Yeah, not going to be a part of it. I do this a lot. If people start talking politics or religion or something in an improper, I'll remove myself from that, especially if they're very strong personalities. I may remove myself from the scene I'm going to go over here for a little while and come back when this calms down. But, staying there, it really forces people to reconsider what's going on. Yeah, I mean, if people get in a petty argument and you're silent, your silence is deafening, and they want to pull you back in, and a lot of times they'll resolve it very quickly, or they'll change the subject, or that's enough about that now, or I don't want to talk about that anymore, or they may even apologize. You know what? I shouldn't have brought that up. My bad. Let's get back to talking about whatever. But silence can do it. Even if it's a heated debate, though. Defending yourself only comes natural. But not defending yourself, it really puts the other person on the spot. Maybe he's right. Or maybe he's confident. He's not saying anything. It drives people crazy. It drives me crazy. And so that's why I have to really work on this. But instead of defending yourself, you're quiet, it will make the other party over-explain their side or over-attack your stance. And you've not even fully described your stance. So it causes a person who can't stand silence to react in negative ways toward how they should. So that strategic withdrawal. And then, a lot of times it's not just confrontation, it's agreement. When somebody makes a suggestion you support, you can do something nonverbal. Just a slight head nod, or that subtle things, or I've seen people just close their eyes and that's it, man. I love it. I love it when I first started speaking in public and you see that silent agreement. So it's good to receive that. It's also great to give it, because if someone else is making your case, just be quiet. Let them go. It's fantastic. Now you got somebody else on your side, and especially when you're trying to build a consensus or some momentum, and you don't have to use words. That silent agreement, it can be a thumbs up, it can be if it's touching or emotional, whatever, put your hand on your chest or something. You don't have to use words, because your words probably aren't going to enhance it. If they said it well, let it stand. And that shows confidence on your part too. I don't have to add to it. This is so important in leadership. Just listening and nodding. In the Baptist church, it would be an amen, brother. You don't have to do that. You can do that with a twinkle in your eye. And it actually makes, even though you didn't say it, your presence, it makes you more authoritative, because you don't have to say anything. I love that. And then this is similar to the pause, but delaying your answer. Instead of immediately, delay it. This is great when you are being put on the spot, when you're like in an interview situation. If you're in a situation, this can be very social. Well, David, what do you think about that? Usually I've already let them know. And people know how I stand most of the time. However, that delayed answer, take your time to respond, like you've thought about it or you're thinking about it. You don't have to just immediately answer. It makes you appear more in control. Not that you're having to wordsmith or choose your words wisely, but you're arranging your thoughts. And it's almost like that advanced math teacher teaching basic math. They know so much. You ask them a basic question, okay, they have to go through all of their knowledge and choose the right answer. It's easy. They can do it anytime. And this delayed answer is a little bit that way. It's like, all right, well, I'm considering everything. And based on that, here's a pause. I don't have to rush to fill this gap. And this silence is commanding attention. And then I've really got an advantage, because everybody's waiting to hear what I got to say. Job interviews, it's so important. Negotiations, they put their offer on the table. They're waiting for the response. Even if you have to physically take a deep breath, and that's good too. Just it helps calm you down as well. Pause and then give the answer. You come across as more composed and more intentional in your response. I like it. Mastering silence as a tool is going to pay dividends, and I don't care what the situation is. I don't care what the situation is. A lot of times in music, you'll see shows, and this is, I don't know, it's a strategic approach, but many times people will come out and they come out with a song. We're talking about a concert. They come out, they sing usually 2 or 3 songs before they address the crowd. And the best ones are the ones that don't talk between every song. And I'm not just talking about entertainment value. We didn't come here to hear you talk. We came to hear you sing. But you do want them to acknowledge the crowd. But usually they'll wait till after the 3rd song. That's the unspoken formula. But I love it. I love it. And you think about strong silent type people. I talked about personal stuff, but it just, Papa, who was great example of that. But there's a lot of people that I've never heard speak, and I didn't know. But there's some leaders in our past that's what they were known for. George Washington was known for being very quiet. I mean, a powerful man. He led throngs of people through tough times, but he was more I'll show you rather than tell you. He didn't talk a lot. He commanded respect, and that silence commands respect. He was very decisive. It wasn't a lot of negotiating. Wasn't a lot of tell me what you think. No, he made a decision. He was very decisive and went on. People followed him. Absolutely. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant. He was known for being very, very quiet, very stoic. I mean, the battlefield, he's known for leading people into battle. Again, actions and not words. And then there's others. Calvin Coolidge is a president that he was known as Silent Cal. I didn't know that. Not Simon Cowell. Silent Cal. He was famous for using as few words as possible. Makes them carry more weight. And then, of course, Clint Eastwood. We know him. He still doesn't talk a lot. It looks funny to see pics of him laughing because he's known as that. The character he played in these Westerns is not unlike the way he is in real life. And when I heard he was directing, people would talk about when he directs movies, he would let them go, and then if they didn't play it the way he thought, he would correct them, but in very few words. I mean, he even had a character in some of his spaghetti westerns. I think it was a trilogy of them where he had no name. The man with no name was his character. And that you look at some of these, you'll look at them differently because there's a lot of smoking, a lot of spitting, a lot of looking around with that grimace on his face, and a ton of content with no words. A stare was a paragraph. I love it, and I struggle with it a lot of times. That's one reason these podcasts are self-help for me. But you think of others that had few words, but their persona carried it. James Bond, more the Daniel Craig than the Roger Moore, but his dialogue was minimal compared to some of the others. And then you look at some of the movies like Mad Max. I mean, you don't need a lot of talk because that's a desolate situation. After a nuclear war and everything is just gone, you don't need a lot of chit chat. I can't imagine Mad Max being a rattle trap or being Mad Max. The Mel Gibson character, unlike the one on Lethal Weapon, where he talked a lot, he was crazy. Tom Hardy is another actor that is best with, less dialogue. And then you even look at The Godfather, Marlon Brando's character in that. Vito, man, he's the man. He didn't talk a lot. You come in, had all these people come in who needed his help, and he would sit and listen. And then when he talked in that legendary voice, he was very decisive. He was very kind, very ruthless, but he was also, he didn't talk for the sake of a word count. So I think it's great. The other side of that is understanding when people are quiet, and it's not necessarily a positive thing. So you got somebody silent in the room now. We need to notice that for understanding maybe someone who needs help, or if they're in distress, or they're just something's not right, and noticing silence so that you can maybe help in some way. And this is somebody, it's unusual. They're unusually quiet. It's a change in their behavior. They're usually talkative. They're usually laughing, and they're not. Something might be wrong there. And I try to be very sensitive to that. Silence can be, it can show sadness or anxiety or frustration or stress, or, something's going on. And I usually, in that case, find them when somebody leaves the room and it's just us, or if they leave the room, I go, hey, everything okay? You just want to double check. Yeah, I'm fine. And sometimes, yeah, I'm fine. You're not fine. But if it's a change in their behavior, or you can tell they're under some emotional distress, sometimes they're just overwhelmed. I have had people that I know are very, they're very outgoing, and then I'll invite them over to the garage back when we had the garage, and they'll get in there with 8 to 10 type A personalities, and boom, they're overwhelmed. So they're very quiet. I've told these guys, oh, you're going to love this guy. He's crazy, blah, 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 blah. He comes in and he's like quiet as a mouse. Overwhelmed and can't get up to speed. And sometimes they come in and they get up to speed too quick. You want to sit down and shut up, give me a break. But also, a lot of times they're overwhelmed with everything else. They've had a bad day. Something's going on. They got decisions. They got something going on in the morning. They just heard some bad news. So silence can also, it can be an indicator. A lot of times they're just, if somebody's not included to the level they wanted to, they'll go silent on you. Or maybe they're intimidated. And so, silence can be a cry for help. Whether it's physical help or, mentally they're in a tough time. Sometimes they're just bored. They're bored. My goodness. I know one thing with groups, when I'm speaking to groups, you want them involved. I mean, you can tell if they're engaged or not, but a lot of times they're bored and they're not engaged. So you want to get them talking, and sometimes just having someone else talk. That's one of the things that some of you are very kind in your feedback. You'd like for me to have more guests. I realize this voice for 45 minutes to an hour, I can cure insomnia. I get it. And so pulling other people into a conversation is important because it keeps it going. And when people are silent, okay, you need to respond a lot of times to deal with that. And sometimes people are just thinking. It's not always a bad thing, but noticing that, especially in a situation where it's a bit of a cry for help or an alarm. I can see that personally a lot. I can see it, a lot of times in meetings. I would always, when I was leading a meeting, I need feedback. I've got a ton of them, but they're the 3M Post-its for the wall, the big ones. And the reason I use 3M is because I write on them with the chisel point. I write on them with these. And the reason I get 3M, a trusted name and adhesive this won't bleed through. I We had some non-3Ms one time. They supplied me, and I always say 3M because I'm not sure it won't bleed through. And I wrote all over a freshly painted wall one time. Never forgot about it. A little bit scarred. They were not silent, I'll say that. But you want to pull them in. I need their input. I've said it a million times, not exaggerating. Look, your input is part of the formula that's going to give us the right answer. If I don't get your input, something's missing. So that's why I want to get them talking. And when they're talking, I can be silent. So there's, a lot of different things. Facial expressions, body language, response time. Do they come right? Are they engaged at all? Then the level of their engagement. It's very important as a leader to know all of these things. And they're not using silence as a tool. They're silent from some other reason. Maybe it's maybe it's too hot in here. Maybe it's too cold in here. But you see people's patterns over time, and there's something to be said for a cadence and understanding that. Socially, absolutely. In business, you can develop a cadence, but also that. But if something's not right, quiet today. Everything okay? And always ask until you understand, because it's going to be a distraction to you otherwise. So mastering silence as a tool, it's going to help with your influence. It's going to make you more respected, and it's definitely going to help you with your control. And we like control. We do. So what do? We talked some of these earlier, but I want to hit it again. Practice the power of the pause. But before responding to a question or a statement, pause for a few seconds. It makes you seem more thoughtful, makes you seem more composed. You can even, do something to keep you from talking. A lot of times you'll see in golf, they have their routine before they hit the ball. I talked about what comedians do and different things. They have some mannerisms they do before they do the next thing. Develop that. What do? Do the beard stroke. There's many things that you can do. And also in that time, it's going to give your words more weight, but it's also many times someone will disturb that silence. They can't take it. And they'll disturb that silence with more information for you. I love it. Second, so the pause. Use silence to command respect. How do you do that? Well, you speak less, first of all. And anything unnecessary. If you are coming into a situation where you want to command respect, cut out the small talk or filler words. You cut that out. The ands and the ums and the knows and all the extra stuff. Get right to it. Now there's a time for small talk. I'm a small talk guy. I probably have more small talk than I have serious talk in a lot of situations. But when you're trying to, your goal is to command respect. That's just the facts. Let's focus on it. It's like remember the old FBI show? What was his name? Sam? I can't remember his name. Had that very gravelly voice when they would start talking about just the facts, ma'am. Please, just the facts. That guy commanded respect. So get rid of the small talk and the filler words. And when you speak, people are going to listen a little more carefully because they know you are intentional with your words. You've prepared. You know what you want to say. It could be in response to something, or it can be initiating something. Come in and hit them with the facts. That's going to command respect. And then I think in a situation, and I've been watching poker on TV more. I know scratching my head is unprofessional, but then again, that's just Dave. But I've been watching the poker, and they try to remove all tails. They kind of keep the same expression. They'll wait, and they'll wait, and they're trying to decide what to do, but also a lot of times they're bluffing, and many times that cracks their competitor. So in a high stakes situation, stay silent. Stay silent. In negotiations, or when you're trying to resolve a conflict, resist the urge to fill the silence. Let that other person speak first. First one to speak loses. And it often leads to them backtracking or over-explaining or making concessions. I've seen it so many times. People will make an offer. I'm silent, and they'll sweeten the pot. My silence, well, we could always do this too. And of course, your expenses would be paid. I'm just being quiet. I would have taken the first thing. Yeah. Yeah. And meals are included, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah. All right, I'm just going to be quiet, and this thing's going to get better and better and better. But in high-stakes situation, that reveals you feel like you have the upper hand. And if you feel like you have the upper hand, that's going to make them wonder about their stance. So true in cards. When they're betting on a crappy hand, well, they're confident. And how many times has the guy with the better hand folded because of the confidence of the other person? I love it. Silence is so important. I think the overreaching rule, I remember I was always taught, try to keep it 80-20, meaning have the other person talk 80% of the time and you talk 20, because they're going to think, oh, this person is wonderful. They're so interested in me, and it's true. I'm talking about being sincere, but also the overreaching rule of observe more and speak less. In meetings, social situations, arguments, debates, that a lot of times in a debate or an argument, you feel like you got to make your point, drive it home and drive it home and drive it home. Listen more than you talk. Body language. I'm telling you, nods are important. Eye contact. People who have something to hide are bad with eye contact. People who have a lesser hand, a inferior stance as far as negotiation, if they're not on a level playing field, they're not good with eye contact. So notice that, but also use that. You're going to gain a lot deeper insight into people's emotions or motives. It's going to give you an advantage. And a lot of times that advantage, it's not always win or lose. It can be win most of the time, but when I say advantage, it'll make you understand that person a little bit more. And that's good, especially if you want to help them. It's not always a foe, an enemy. So that silence and that listening more than you're talking, that helps you understand them and you can help them. Then I guess the last one I'll go over is using strategic silence for emotional control. So if people are criticizing you or trying to provoke you or trying to really get under your skin, using silence is fantastic, because impulsive reactions, I can make you a list of how impulsive reactions have gotten me in trouble. Because I get emotional. I am impulsive. My modus operandi is I'm a counterpuncher. I usually don't draw first blood, but I will come back. And, I'll bring a gun to a knife fight. And that impulsiveness has caused me in the past to overdo it. I've hurt people's feelings. You do this. Okay, I'll show you. I'll do this. And this can be practical jokes. It could be a war of words. It could be posturing in many ways, but I overcompensate when I could have just remained quiet and not said something that I would regret or relinquish control of the situation. I came back over the top. Well, I don't have control anymore. Yeah, I can say, ha ha ha, look at that. I said this. It's a showstopper. It might not be a show you want to stop. And you lose respect from many people. You definitely lose respect from the person you just offended or hurt or whatever. So that using it for your emotional control and be calm. You don't want to do things you're going to regret. And that's, that has been, I got half a dozen situations where I could talk through to where I've done that. I remember I can tell you exactly. In 2007, it was March 27th. It was my birthday. I was doing I was in the middle of a trade show week, and I had sent an email with a couple of snarky things on it, and I had somebody I respect tell me the day before, you need to fly to Detroit, and you need to talk to that person, and you need to apologize face to face. That person could be running this company someday, and you don't want this to hang out there. Yeah, it's because of something I did emotionally. The way that story ends, and I believe I've told it before, but I go in and I say, hey, Kim. Kim was like, well, Dave, what are you doing here? Well, can I close the door? Sat down. I said, Kim, I want to talk to you about that email I sent. And you know what she said? Looked me right in the eye. What email? And I had to remind her of it. I've flown all the way to Detroit. This is the trip where I went to the soul food place in the middle of the night, Larry Bird. That's the same trip. But anyway, I reminded her of the email. She went, oh, yeah, no. What was wrong with it? And I said, well, I went a little overboard with this. And I don't think so. I agreed with your email. And we worked together for years after that, closely, still a good friend. However, that's something that I did. And it wasn't only my over-the-top response. Other people, I lost respect of other people when I could have just said nothing. My words didn't change a thing other than made my situation worse. So there's a lot of that. I'm a very emotional person. You get me talking about something, I'll go off on a tangent when I could just be quiet, especially when someone doesn't ask my opinion. And that's a good rule of thumb when I am not at my worst, not necessarily at my best. I gauge my response based on, did someone ask me? Is someone seeking what I think about it? I could be quiet a lot if I followed that rule. So silence is golden. Yes. But you got those people, silent but deadly. That has a different connotation. I don't know if you do this or that, but silent but deadly, it makes me think of, maybe a sophomoric use of the term. It can be deadly for your enemies. It can be golden for your peers and people that are on your team. You'll be much better off because you'll gain perspective. So hopefully this helps. I'm gonna work on this. I really am. We're working on Dave a lot lately with my impatience and my greediness and my control freakism and my silence. So thanks for joining. I appreciate it so much. Please hit me up at dave@otalks.com or david@otalks.com, or just go to otalks.com and everything's there. A lot happening. I'm about to turn 60 at the end of the month, so I'm excited because I got my kids are coming to town. We're going to have a grand piping time. So thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for hanging out. But most of all, thanks for talking with Dave, and giddy up.